Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, first, just a comment, although you've all pointed out that it's a large fraction, but not the complete amount of those who take family leave because of adoption or of having a child. Senator Sinema and I have a bill which would allow the pull forward of a portion of a earned income, of a child tax credit to allow a lump sum payment of $5,000 at the birth of our adoption. And the parent can use it either as income replacement if she chooses to stay home, or if he chooses to stay home, or they can use it for child care if they choose to go back to work. Yes, they are losing $500 in subsequent years from their child tax credit. On the other hand, as we all know, studies show that if a woman stays attached to the workforce, her future income growth is such that it more than makes up this $500 she's losing in subsequent years. I spoke about that fast, but if anybody wants more information, I'd love to give it to them. More importantly, I think it's something that can be possibly paid for. And I say that because right now, sir, you mentioned of the de minimis almost payroll tax, but we have a president who won't support any tax on anybody less than $400,000, even if it's to save Social Security. Now, we've first got to line up our priorities. We've got to make sure that Social Security don't go bankrupt, and right now we've had no commitment to making that happen. And the old saw about let's just tax those who make over $400,000 a year, I'll point out that the president has proposed over $4 trillion in those who make over $400,000 a year, and none of that money is going to this sort of payroll program. So on the federal level, we have to say, yes, it's great that Oregon has done this. On the federal level, I don't see a path forward in terms of raising the payroll tax. Ms. Gressler, though, and Ms. Melito, when I researched this a few years ago, as I was working on this with Senator Sinema, the research I did at the time said that most people, this is several years ago, so with inflation it'd be higher, but most workers who make over $70,000 a year have paid leave of some sort. Now, it might be paid vacation day or personal days. It wasn't per se paid leave, but it was time they could take off if their parent were sick or if their child were sick or if they had a child. Is that still the case? And I know that because I don't know the answer to this because it's been a while since I've looked at this. Ms. Gressler?
Yes, I suspect it's gone up even more since then. The latest data we have is from 2018, and that shows that about 73% of workers across all income levels report that they have access to some type of paid leave for an FMLA condition at work. And I think that
But to Ms. Fry's point, and to your point, we can imagine that that's going to be principally people who make above a certain income level. The woman who's behind the counter at the convenience store, she has a lower wage and probably an hourly wage and a more tenuous employment circumstance. So again, is this not disproportionately those who are upper income?
It's still disproportionately those that are upper income, but we have seen the most significant growth in paid family leave policies in those lower income groups over recent years.
That's great. Now, why have you seen that growth has happened? Because of the policies that have been advocated, such as in Oregon, or what?
No, the growth that we've seen, and I mentioned it, increased sixfold. If you look at the 6 years before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed versus the 6 years since then, the percentage of workers as formally measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistic that are looking at employer policies only, that's where we've seen that sixfold increase. And it's companies like Lowe's, Starbucks, Chipotle that typically are employing lower income workers.
So let me stop you there, because I also was struck when I did this research a few years ago. And some companies like Google, Deloitte, and others were in California providing paid leave as a company policy. And then when California put in their program, they actually pulled back on their business offered paid leave, and they discharged the obligation to the taxpayer. And so on net, there's no increased benefit to the worker. There is just less obligation on the case of businesses. Is that a common thing, or is that only California?
That's exactly what happens with these state policies. It's a windfall benefit to the employer that already provides a policy. They send their workers to the state program first. Once they've used up all of those benefits and had to go through that burdensome application process, then the employer will top them up to bring them to the same level that they had been before. So the worker has to go through 2 programs to get the same thing that they were.
Now, let me ask you, though, I'm also told that Washington State did it in such a way that avoided that. And again, I'm just telling you this because I've been told that, not because I know details. Can you comment on is my understanding of the Washington State program that it avoided this kind of zero sum for the employee, but a windfall for the employer?
I believe they have a process where the employer can get a qualification to just run their own program and to opt out of that. And that is something that I would encourage any state or government policy to do, is to allow an opt-out for employers who are already providing a minimum level of paid family leave.
Well, I had questions for you all, but I'm out of time, so thank you all.